My sister borrowed $150,000 from me for a house, and then she had a wedding in the Maldives without me. I didn't show up, but the lawyer did. With the papers, now I have a house. All she has are wedding photos labeled rent. I used to believe in family loyalty, in the kind of bond that no matter what, no matter how much distance there was or how many fights you had, you always had each other's backs. But that belief, that comforting thought, was about to shatter. I remember the day Claire called. It was early spring, and I had just gotten home after a grueling week at work. I was sitting on my couch, scrolling through some emails when my phone buzzed. "Mark," she said, and her voice sounded different, anxious even. "I need to ask you for a huge favor." I leaned back, rubbing my eyes. We hadn't talked much in the last few months, not since her last big move, leaving her boyfriend of 2 years. It wasn't out of the ordinary for Claire to go through these phases. She was always the dramatic one. "What's up?" I replied, already bracing myself for some small crisis. "I'm buying a house," she said quickly, almost too quickly. "But Mark, I need a loan, just to close the deal. You know, I've got the mortgage approved, but I need a little extra to make it happen. Just $150,000, and I'll pay you back, I promise. You know I will." I felt that familiar pull, the one you get when someone you love asks for help. It's not that I had $150,000 lying around, but we were family, and she was my little sister. "Of course," I said before even thinking it through. "I'll wire it to you by the end of the day." I didn't hesitate. I trusted her. I always had. Claire and I had been close when we were younger. Sure, we fought. A lot. But it was always small stuff. The kind of thing that you can laugh off later. She was my annoying little sister, and I was the protective older brother. It was simple. She had a history of making reckless decisions, though. Buying things she couldn't afford, expecting others to clean up her mess. But this was different. She was an adult now. She was buying a house. That was supposed to mean something, wasn't it? That she was starting to build something real, something permanent. It wasn't just the money, it was everything. The expectation that she was doing something responsible, something grown up, made me believe her. I didn't think twice. That afternoon, I went to the bank and wired her the money. I didn't even think to ask her for a timeline, didn't ask for any security. I trusted her, and that was enough. That's what family does, right? They trust each other. The next couple of weeks passed in a blur. There were some phone calls, some texts, some promises about paperwork, but something felt off. I couldn't quite put my finger on it. Claire was always a little scatterbrained, so it wasn't too unusual that she wasn't keeping me updated on every little detail. I'd be patient. It was her house, after all. It wasn't like she was buying a mansion. She was buying a modest place, a first home. I'd been there. I knew how it felt. Then one day it hit me. I was scrolling through Facebook, trying to unwind after another brutal day at work, when I saw it. A photo. Claire in a white dress, standing on the edge of a crystal-clear beach, the ocean stretching out behind her. There were palm trees swaying in the breeze, a few of her friends posing around her. "Wow," I muttered, staring at the picture. My mind was still a little foggy from work, but the caption made me stop. "Happiest day of my life. Hashtag wedding bliss." I blinked. Wedding? That's when it hit me. Claire had gone off to the Maldives to get married. She didn't tell me. She didn't even mention it. And this wasn't just a small wedding. This was something out of a magazine, a destination wedding, the kind you only see on Instagram influencers' feeds. And there I was, back home, in my small apartment, alone. No wedding invite, no heads up, nothing. I stared at the photo for a long time, a tight feeling starting to rise in my chest. This wasn't right. Where was the house? Where was the $150,000 I'd given her? I shot her a text, trying to play it cool. "Congrats on the wedding. Looks amazing. But I thought you were buying a house. What happened with that?" It took her a while to respond, but when she did, the reply was cold and curt. "It's complicated. Don't worry about it. I'm happy. Talk soon." Talk soon. That was it. I could feel my frustration growing. I let it simmer for a couple of days, then gave her a call. "Claire, we need to talk." She picked up right away. Oh, hey, Mark. What's up? What's up? You tell me. You just had a wedding in the Maldives and you didn't even invite me? And the house? You never told me what happened. Where's my money? There was a long silence on the other end of the line. The kind of silence that makes your heart race because you know the truth, but you don't want to hear it. Look, she finally said, her voice faltering a little. I didn't want to make it a big deal. The wedding was a spontaneous thing. And about the house, I just couldn't make it work. It's complicated, okay? Complicated. I didn't believe her. Not for a second. You owe me, Claire. You owe me $150,000. That's not a small amount of money. I'll pay you back, okay? I will. Just not right now. Things are tight. I swallowed the bitter lump in my throat. Tight? She had the money for a wedding in the Maldives, but she couldn't pay me back the money I'd loaned her? I wanted to yell, to scream, but I didn't. I didn't want to make a scene. I'll wait for the payment, I said, my voice colder than I intended. But I need something more concrete from you. A plan, a timeline, something. There was a quiet pause before she replied. I'll get back to you on that. Promise. I ended the call with a feeling of emptiness in my chest. I should have trusted my gut. I should have seen it coming, but I didn't. And now I had to face the truth. The money was gone. And my sister? She had her wedding photos, her exotic honeymoon, and a pile of excuses. And I had the bill. The next few weeks were filled with silence. Claire didn't reach out, and I didn't try to contact her again. I wasn't sure what I expected. Maybe a sudden change of heart, maybe an apology, maybe even an explanation. But there was nothing. The longer I waited, the more frustrated I became. I had let it slide before, thinking it was just a phase that she'd come to her senses. But no, this was something else. I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being taken advantage of. The longer it went on, the more I realized how much she'd manipulated me into giving her that loan. All under the guise of family, of trust. But somewhere, deep down, I knew I was being foolish. The debt, the house, the wedding. It was all a string of lies, and I had been the fool at the other end. It was a Sunday when it hit me. I was sitting at my kitchen table, trying to make sense of my finances. It was quiet. The kind of quiet that makes your thoughts loud. And that's when I decided I couldn't just sit back and let this happen. I called the lawyer. I'd never been one to get tangled up in legal matters. I'd always figured I could handle things myself, and especially when it came to family. But this was different. This wasn't a loan between friends. This wasn't some small favor. This was betrayal, and I wasn't going to let her get away with it. The lawyer's office was in a small building downtown, tucked away between a few restaurants. I remember the way the place smelled. Old leather, coffee, and faintly of paper. The man I spoke to, Martin, was the kind of lawyer who didn't mince words. He looked like he'd been handling corporate lawsuits for decades, yet there was something in his eyes that told me he saw things more clearly than most people. I told him the whole story, from the loan to the wedding in the Maldives. I didn't leave out any details, not even the fact that I'd given her the money without asking for collateral or a clear repayment plan. When I finished, he didn't ask me how I was feeling. He didn't offer sympathy. Instead, he leaned back in his chair, tapping his pen against his desk. You have a case, he said simply. The fact that you gave her the money with no formal agreement could be a problem, but you have evidence. Bank transfers, emails, messages, the whole lot. You'll be fine. I nodded, feeling a weight lifting off my chest. It wasn't a sure thing, but it was a start. The next few weeks became a blur of paperwork, legal jargon, and constant meetings. Martin took the reins, gathering everything we could. Any form of communication, any trace of the money that had been transferred. Claire had no idea what was coming. But it wasn't just about the money. That was the thing. It wasn't just about the house she was supposed to buy. It wasn't even about the wedding. No, it was about something deeper. It was about respect. The respect that I had given her all these years. The respect that I thought we shared as siblings. And it was about the cold realization that she never respected me. There were times I would sit in the evenings after work and just stare at my phone, wondering why she hadn't reached out yet. Had she really forgotten? Had she convinced herself that this was somehow my fault? That maybe I was overreacting? The questions swirled in my mind, but I couldn't get any answers. But the more I thought about it, the more determined I became. If Claire wasn't going to pay me back, if she wasn't going to make this right, then I would. I would take control. I decided that it was time to make my move. I didn't tell Martin at first. I didn't want to seem too eager, too desperate. But deep down, I was tired. Tired of waiting, tired of hoping. I had put enough of my energy into this. It was time for action. It was the following week when I finally got the call I was waiting for. I was sitting in my car, parked outside of my apartment building, when the phone rang. It was Claire. "Hey," she said, her voice sounding oddly casual. "It's been a while, huh? How's everything?" I almost laughed. How had everything been? How was everything, considering that my sister had gone halfway across the world to get married while I was left holding the bag? "Good," I replied, trying to keep my voice steady. "Everything's fine." There was an awkward silence on the other end. I could practically hear her trying to piece together what she was going to say next. Finally, she spoke again. "So, I was thinking about that loan, Mark. I know I said I'd pay you back, and I meant it, but things have been really tight lately, you know? I'm not sure when I'll be able to send the money." It was as if she didn't even care. It was as if she didn't realize that I had spent weeks arranging legal action, gathering evidence, preparing to take back what was mine. "I understand," I said quietly, "but you should know, Claire, it's not just about the money anymore. It's about what you've done, what you've put me through." "Mark, I didn't mean to hurt you," she said quickly, almost too quickly. "I never wanted it to be like this." But I could hear the false sincerity in her voice. It wasn't enough. It wasn't enough to make me forget the months of silence, the months of excuses. She had thought she could get away with it. She had thought I would let it go. But I wasn't going to. Not this time. "I've already taken steps to make this right," I said. "You'll be hearing from my lawyer soon." I hung up before she could say anything else. I sat there for a moment, letting the reality sink in. It wasn't easy to be this cold. It wasn't easy to confront my sister like this, to take her to court. But it was necessary. She had crossed the line. Now there was no turning back. The days leading up to the wedding were the hardest. I could feel the tension in my chest grow with each passing hour. Claire's silence had shifted from irritation to something more dangerous. She was pretending like nothing had happened, like she hadn't taken my money, like she hadn't kept me in the dark for months. It wasn't just her that had changed. I had changed too. A small seed of doubt had grown into full-blown suspicion, and every time I thought about her wedding, I could feel my anger simmering beneath the surface. I tried to push it away. I tried to focus on work, on the small things that made up the rhythm of my day. But I kept coming back to one thought. How could she do this to me? The wedding was scheduled for a Friday, a bright sunny day in late spring. Claire had posted pictures of her wedding plans all over social media. The Maldives, crystal clear water, luxurious resorts. Every detail screamed excess, screamed that nothing had been spared. It was the kind of wedding people dreamed about, one that seemed impossible for a normal person to afford. But somehow she had made it happen. And not a word from her about the debt. It was around 10 a.m. when I saw the post on Instagram. A picture of Claire and her new husband standing on a beach, the turquoise water behind them, their faces beaming with happiness. The caption read, "A perfect start to forever." I looked at the picture for a long time, trying to make sense of it. I had already known she was going to go through with it, but seeing it made it feel so much more real. That smile on her face. How could she be so happy while leaving me behind? How could she be so oblivious to what she had done? And then it hit me. She had completely erased me from the equation. I wasn't just an afterthought. I was irrelevant. I put the phone down and tried to breathe. "Don't react," I told myself. "Don't let her get to you." But the truth was, I was furious. The betrayal cut deep, deeper than I was willing to admit. I had done everything for her. I had trusted her with the one thing I couldn't afford to lose. And now she was out there celebrating her new life, with someone else on the other side of the world. And there I was, sitting alone with nothing but the cold, gnawing feeling of being used. I knew I couldn't wait any longer. It was time to act. I called Martin. "I need you to do something for me," I said. "I want the house. I want to make sure I get it back. I'm done waiting. I could hear Martin's quiet, deliberate breathing on the other end of the phone. Are you sure? Because once we send the papers, it's game over. This is the last step. I'm sure, I said, my voice cold. She thinks she can get away with this. She can't. A few hours later, I received a call from Martin again. The lawyer will be there tomorrow morning, he said. Everything's set. I hung up and stared at the walls of my apartment. I had a house. I had a house she had never even paid for. And now, thanks to the legal process I had set in motion, it was mine. But the reality of it wasn't as satisfying as I'd hoped. The satisfaction, the closure. It didn't feel as good as I'd imagined. It didn't bring me any peace. I couldn't bring myself to feel victorious. I didn't want this fight. I just wanted my sister to acknowledge me again, to admit what she had done. The following morning, I drove to the wedding venue in the city. I had never been to a place like this before. The grand, sweeping staircase, the large chandeliers, the heavy, velvety curtains draping over the walls. It looked like a ballroom out of a fairy tale, a place where people went to make memories. But for me, it was just a building, just a place where I was going to take back what was rightfully mine. I had asked Martin to send a lawyer to the venue before the ceremony began. He had made arrangements, ensuring that the documents would be ready and delivered to Claire before the vows were exchanged. I wasn't sure how she would react, but I wasn't worried. She would either accept it or she wouldn't. Either way, I was done caring. I arrived at the venue early, walking through the grand entrance with my lawyer in tow. We were given access by the event staff, who hadn't asked questions, and we waited. It was a small price to pay, considering what I was about to do. It wasn't about humiliation or drama. It wasn't about making a scene. It was about reclaiming control. The ceremony was set to start in just under an hour. Claire was nowhere to be seen, but the guests were slowly filling in, wearing their finest clothes, their faces eager, their eyes shining with excitement. It was all so ordinary. It made the whole thing feel even more absurd. At 11:30 a.m., Claire and her new husband made their grand entrance, walking down the aisle, hand in hand, beaming. They looked happy, so in love, so oblivious to the storm that was brewing just a few steps away. I wanted to feel happy for her. I wanted to feel like she had found the joy she deserved. But I couldn't. Not after everything that had happened. The lawyer approached me quietly, his briefcase in hand, and motioned for me to follow him. The moment had arrived. I didn't look at Claire as I made my way to the front. I didn't need to. This wasn't about her anymore. This was about making sure that justice was served. I wasn't going to let her escape this, not when she thought she could get away with it all. The lawyer stepped up to her and handed her the papers. She froze when she saw the documents. Her smile faltered as she read the first line, then the second. There was a moment of complete stillness, a long pause where nothing moved except for the sound of my heartbeat in my ears. Finally, she looked up, her eyes wide with shock, her mouth slightly open. "What is this?" she asked, her voice shaky, barely above a whisper. "It's the deed to the house," the lawyer said, his tone businesslike. "The loan was not repaid. It's now in the possession of your brother." Claire's eyes flickered toward me, then quickly back to the papers in her hands. For the first time, I saw something other than indifference in her eyes. Fear. Panic. "Mark, she began, but the words caught in her throat. "I didn't," but I wasn't interested in explanations. Not anymore. "I'm sorry, Claire," I said, my voice flat, emotionless. "But the house is mine now. You've had your chance, and you blew it." The room was silent, the guests still standing, watching the exchange unfold before them. The wedding that had seemed like the perfect fairy tale was now tainted, and it was because of her. She had made this happen. I turned and walked away, feeling nothing. There was no joy in this victory, only the cold certainty that, in the end, I had done what needed to be done. The drive home was long and quiet. I couldn't shake the image of Claire's face when she saw the papers. It wasn't the shock or even the panic that bothered me. It was the realization that she had never expected me to fight back, that somehow she thought she could continue on with her life without facing the consequences of what she'd done. I had been a fool to believe her, to believe she was ever truly on my side. The lawyer had said it would take a few weeks to finalize everything. The paperwork was filed, the deed was transferred, and it was done. I was officially the owner of the house. But the cost of this victory, the emotional toll, weighed heavy on me. I had won, but at what cost? That night, I sat in my apartment, staring at the ceiling. It felt hollow, like a victory I hadn't earned. I should have felt relieved, free, but instead I felt an odd mix of emptiness and sadness. Claire hadn't even called. She hadn't texted. There was no apology, no acknowledgement of her actions, and most of all, no attempt to make amends. The silence between us was deafening, and it was becoming clearer with each passing moment that there was no going back. As I sat in that silence, I thought back to our childhood, the times we shared as kids. There were moments when she was the only person who understood me. She was my sister, my family. We used to be close, before everything became so complicated. There was a time when I would have trusted her with anything, when she would have been the first person I turned to. But now I didn't even recognize her. How did we get here? How had we gone from being best friends to this? I heard the sound of my phone buzzing on the table beside me, pulling me from my thoughts. I glanced at the screen and saw Claire's name. I stared at it for a moment, my heart skipping a beat. Was this the moment? Was she finally reaching out? After everything, would she apologize? Would she try to fix things? I hesitated before picking up the phone. But when I answered, it wasn't Claire's voice. It was her husband. "Mark, hey," he said, sounding oddly casual as if nothing had happened. "I think we need to talk." I felt my blood run cold. "About what?" "About the house. Claire's pretty upset about the whole thing," he said, his voice starting to soften. "She didn't mean for things to get out of hand like this. I think she made some mistakes. We all make mistakes, right?" I bit my lip, forcing myself to stay calm. "This isn't about mistakes," I said, keeping my voice steady. "This is about trust. She borrowed money from me and never intended to repay it. She got the money to buy a house, and instead she spent it on a wedding. Do you even understand what that feels like?" I heard him sigh on the other end of the line. "Look, I get it, but she's still my wife, and we're both trying to figure things out. She's just upset. Maybe you could meet up, talk this through? I'm sure you can work something out." I could feel my frustration building, but I didn't want to lose control. "This isn't something I want to talk through," I replied, each word slow and deliberate. "It's done. The house is mine now. There's no more discussion. It's over." I could hear the hesitation in his voice. "All right, but Claire really wants to speak with you. Maybe just listen to her." I didn't respond right away. What was there to say? What more could be said? Claire had made her choices and I had made mine. I didn't owe her anything. Not anymore. And yet a part of me felt guilty. Part of me wanted to fix this, to undo the damage. But the other part of me knew the truth. I couldn't fix her. I couldn't fix what she had done to me. "Tell her I'll think about it," I said finally. "But don't expect anything more than that." I hung up and set the phone down, rubbing my eyes. The decision had been made. I had done what was necessary to protect myself, to get back what I had given away. The legal papers, the house, they were all just pieces of a much bigger puzzle. And in the end, it didn't matter how much she cried, how many apologies she offered. The betrayal couldn't be erased. I didn't hear from Claire for a few days. She had disappeared from my life as quickly as she had entered it, leaving behind nothing but the wreckage of our relationship. There were no more texts, no more calls, only silence. I wasn't sure what I had expected, but this emptiness, it wasn't it. A week later, I received an official letter from Claire's lawyer. The letter didn't surprise me. I knew it was coming. The title of the letter read, "Notice of Intent to Contest the Deed of Property Transfer." I read through the letter carefully, trying to suppress the feelings of anger and disbelief. Claire was not going down without a fight. Of course not. She wasn't going to take this loss lying down. But the more I read, the more I realized it didn't matter. She could contest it all she wanted, but she had no case. The documents were in order. The law was on my side. "You're not going to win this, Claire," I thought to myself. "You can't win this." I felt a strange sense of finality in that moment. There was no going back. There was no more opportunity for reconciliation. And honestly, I didn't want one. The truth was, I had already moved on. I had already walked away from the person I used to call my sister. I went to bed that night feeling lighter. The anger, the hurt, it was still there, but it was different. I had fought for what was mine, and I had won. It wasn't just the house. It was my dignity. It was reclaiming the respect I had lost. I wasn't sure what Claire would do next, but for the first time in months, I didn't care. The battle had been fought, and I had emerged victorious. Cold, yes, but victorious nonetheless.